Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The scariest ground game in the NFL just got a whole lot scarier. The Philadelphia Eagles want to make sure they don't go through another collapse like last year, and they're spending big. Plus, despite their talent, the Suns aren't going to figure this out for one specific reason. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The MVP has a new toy. The King is headed to Charm City. Derrick Henry on a 2-year, $16 million deal headed to the Baltimore Ravens. You want running? They will run, and they will run, and they will run some more. And then they'll play action pass deep for 80-yard touchdown because that's just what they do in Baltimore. Kevin Ostreicher from Locked On Ravens joins me now. And Kevin, this was a team that was able to manufacture offense with a running back by committee approach for a number of seasons now, really. I mean, they have not really since Ray Rice left the building. Derrick Henry at his advanced age, what does he bring to this offense given its current state?
Yeah, he brings a lot. And I know that the way the running back position is valued, or I guess I should say devalued right now, there's a lot of conversation about should you pay running backs. Now, Derrick Henry is at a place in his career where
no one told the NFL this offseason, by the way.
Right, yeah.
All the running backs are getting paid.
That cap increase certainly helped a lot of those guys when it came to their contracts. And Henry, you know, he's talking about the Saquon Barkleys and the Josh Jacobs. Those guys were looking for their first NFL long-term payday.
Right. And
Derrick Henry, he's been there. He's had that. So for him, if he wants to prioritize fit over the most money he could have gotten, I'm not saying Saquon and Derrick and Josh Jacobs don't want to win. They obviously do. But Derrick Henry, $8 million is the same number that the Bears gave DeAndre Swift. It's the same number that the Titans gave Tony Pollard.
Yeah.
I'd take Derrick Henry like on a different level as opposed to those two guys. So I think it was a great move. And in terms of what he brings on the field, we know he's a physical bruiser. We know he's just a monstrous human altogether in terms of his size, but he brings a lot more than that. We've seen him catch multiple screen passes and take him 99 yards to the house. And he's a threat in the pass game. Now he's not going to run a full route tree or anything like that. He's not that shifty or elusive, but you now have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the same backfield. It's almost, I've been saying like it's yin and yang in a sense, where Lamar's that super elusive player, the lightning in the bottle. It's super hard to game plan for him. And now you have Derrick Henry, who is that big bruising back. Short yardage situations, it's already so hard to stop Lamar Jackson because he can juke you out of your shoes. And now Derrick Henry can just run you over. If they run RPOs together, if they run any options, or if they do play action, the threat of Derrick Henry just getting the ball in his hands. Not that Gus Edwards isn't or wasn't good in the Ravens offense. Not that J.K. Dobbins isn't or wasn't good either. But there's just a whole other element to Derrick Henry where the Ravens, they've been the top rushing team in the league, really, for the most part, since Lamar Jackson came in. But just because they've been the best team doesn't mean their ceiling can't get higher with the running game. And Derrick Henry certainly elevates their ceiling and, honestly, their floor.
So I hear all of that, and I think Derrick Henry in this offense for the kind of runs that they already like to do, I think it makes a lot of sense. Let me play devil's advocate for a minute here, Kevin. Derrick Henry is a guy who wants an under center run game, or at least that's where he has been at his best. The Lamar Jackson run game, the ability to get to the edge is a big deal, which is why when you have guys like the big playability before J.K. Dobbins got hurt, the ability to get to the edge was a big deal. That's not how Derrick Henry really plays anymore. So sell me on a schematic marriage here.
I would probably try to say, and they're not the same player, but the way that they used Gus Edwards, Derrick Henry still has speed. Now, he's not the fastest running back in the league by, a wide margin there, but I think that it's going to take some level of an adjustment, especially when you're talking about the mesh point with Lamar. That's something those two are going to have to work out and figure out, because you have a guy like Gus Edwards who had been there for, came in with Lamar. Lamar was the first round pick. Gus Edwards, an undrafted rookie. They've been working together for all those seasons. It takes time there. But I will say that for Baltimore, with Derrick Henry, it's just kind of like you plug him in and you play him in the best way that you can. But in my opinion, this is honestly going to come down to how they build their offensive line, because Lamar is awesome. Derrick Henry's awesome. But the Ravens have a lot of question marks on their offensive line. They could have 4 new starters next offseason, honestly, if we're talking about now to next offseason, because Ronnie Stanley, not a long-term piece. They could release him. John Simpson goes to the Jets for $9 million per season. Kevin Zeitler, free agent, and Morgan Moses, a potential cut candidate too. The only real true long-term piece is Tyler Linderbaum. So there are some rumblings that they might want to get more athletic on their offensive line, get younger on their offensive line. And does that dictate them pulling more guards to the outside and continuing that get to the edge run game? Or do they try to get more physical up front and say, we're just going to pound the ball straight up the middle with 1 or 2 cuts in there as well? So I think that it'll be a combination of both year 2 of Todd Monken's offense. It's going to be interesting to see what path they take, but John Harbaugh is very adamant at the combine that they understand the direction they want to go in. And I'm sure they had Derrick Henry on their minds long before he said that. So they have a plan, but how they build that offensive line is what I'm looking towards.
Stay up to date all year on the Baltimore Ravens by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Ravens on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, the Eagles are trying to make sure last year never happens again. Before we get to how they're doing that, the Steelers added a key difference maker on defense from a division rival. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime has plenty of last-minute tickets to your favorite team. They also make it easy to get in the gate with flash deals and zone deals. Gametime makes it easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. They've got views from all the seats in the venue. Gametime has the lowest price guaranteed. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Right now, new Gametime users get $20 off your first purchase with code LOCKEDON. Terms apply. Just download the Gametime app and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. The Steel City now has a queen, as the former rival Ravens linebacker Patrick is headed to Pittsburgh on a monster deal.
With 4 years of experience. Yes. Like, that's the thing about this, is that he's an experienced 24-year-old. Like, this is a guy where if he becomes what, like if he lives up to the hype that he got when he was coming into the draft, when the Ravens drafted him so high, and everything works out, that's a franchise player you probably have on the roster for another 7 years or so, and can be a centerpiece for your defense, where you keep him in the middle there and he keeps everyone on the same page. That's a heck of an addition. I mean, there's some linebackers in this draft class that are 24 years old that people are looking at right now. So, like, I look at this as a major opportunity for the Steelers, a huge swing. I wasn't sure there would be a signing like this, Mark. I thought that they might get like a Jerome Baker and then get like a Julian Blackmon, like a bunch of guys that would cost you around $5 to $8 million a year, not guys that would cost you at some point maybe $17 million a year in salary cap hits. This is a huge swing.
Wille Gay is leaving the Super Bowl champs for New Orleans, which just happens to be the site of next year's Super Bowl.
It's an absolute steal, right? I mean, this is a guy that is a playmaker that brings a lot of speed to the middle of the defense, brings a lot of speed to the position, all of that. But it's the contract for me, all right? It's the contract for me. 1 year, up to $5 million. Now, I'm doing air quotes for up to $5 million. Why? Because if somebody says that a contract is up to $5 million or up to a certain amount, that generally implies that it is an incentive, that there's incentives in the contract, whether it be production, whether it be, play time based, whatever it might be. That usually it means that there's some kind of incentive that's involved. So the deal itself starts probably lower than $5 million and then can tick up to the maximum of a 1 year, $5 million deal. The reason why this is a steal of a contract is because everybody looked at Wille Gay, if he got out of Kansas City, if he left Kansas City, as A, getting a multi-year deal, and B, landing at least somewhere between $7 to $10 million per year, depending upon whose estimate you're looking at.
And the Vikings are bringing in Sam Darnold to throw passes to Justin Jefferson.
Well, I guess the hits just keep on coming. Sam Darnold signs with the Minnesota Vikings, 1 year, $10 million. For the moment, he is the quarterback that replaces Kirk Cousins. Obviously, it's pretty easy to predict that another young name will enter that mix when it actually comes to training camp. But that's what Sam Darnold is here for, to compete with that rookie right out the gate. Maybe start a few games at the beginning if that rookie isn't quite ready to play. And when that rookie's ready to play, then you take Sam Darnold out. You say, thank you for your service. Here's your $10 million. And that's about what these kinds of bridge quarterbacks have made after adjusting for cap inflation over the last few years. That's what Matt Castle made, for example, last time the Vikings did this with Teddy Bridgewater. So now Sam Darnold's in the building, and you at least have something that can keep the seat warm for a couple of weeks while the rookie gets ready. We'll break down all this and more on Locked On Vikings.
On the hardwood, the Clippers and the T-Wolves faced off in a matchup of two teams sliding down the standings.
118-100 Timberwolves. Clippers came in as a 5.5 point favorite, and the Timberwolves were riding a 2-game losing streak. Last time they played in Minnesota, Clippers got a win in an ugly game where James Harden had just 4 points. Paul George had 15, and it was all about Kawhi Leonard in that game with 32 points. So kind of the opposite tonight. Kawhi Leonard was a big part of this game because he played for about a half of the first quarter and then left with 6 points. Back spasms. They called it something more fancy, like a thoracic event. Why can't they just say back spasms? Anyway, I thought that was weird because he got into street clothes and then left the arena, reportedly.
Philadelphia Eagles GM Howie Roseman doesn't do anything halfway. When he goes big, and he has gone absolute jumbo this off season. Saquon Barkley for $13 million a year. Bryce Huff, my goodness. Landon Dickerson, even his own guy, re-signing him. And we know some of the legends who have walked out the door into retirement. Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox. It's been a little bit of a mixed bag for Philadelphia in that regard. Gino Camilleri from Locked On Eagles joins me now. And Gino, I was going to ask you, like, what do you think of the approach from Howie Roseman? But the approach is the approach. It's what Howie always does. So what did you think of the value of these signings particularly?
One thing my co-host Lou always says, and he puts it so well, is that Howie Roseman learns from his mistakes. He's like a kid who they put their hand near that outlet and you're like, nope, don't do it. Nope, don't do it. And then he does it, like letting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson walk the year before. And then you bring him back. He learned from his mistake, and he's done that time and time again. And the thing about Howie is he's very self-aware, and he understands the mistakes that he made after that 2022 run. And what were they missing? They were missing that elite run game. Oh, what do? You go out and sign Saquon Barkley, who I'm not just going to say he's a running back. He is an offensive weapon that you are paying less money to than Darnell Mooney and Gabe Davis just got on the market. So if you want to put it like that, for the overall talent that you're paying, the ability to get a guy like that in the building and at a price of only $4.3 million more than Chicago paid DeAndre Swift, I think everybody in Philadelphia is happy with that. And the move you made right before that was for Bryce Huff, which was probably the most known, least kept secret in Philadelphia, that this team was enamored with him. They love his explosiveness, his get off. The talk of, is Hassan Reddick going to get traded? Is Josh Sweat going to get traded? Well, Howie said, I'm going to make sure that I have all my options open, and I'm going to go sign a guy that this team thoroughly believes in. They go and pay him, I would say, under market value, as opposed to what the rest of some of these contracts on the defensive line are going for at this moment. And we'll see if he can get assets for Josh Sweat and or Hassan Reddick, and maybe keep one of them at the same time, adding Bryce Huff and allowing now Nolan Smith to take a bigger role. And then you go to the move that started the day in Landon Dickerson. If that's the first move you make all day and you solidify the left side of your offensive line with Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson until 2028, you already won the day, Howie Roseman. So it's a great first 2 days. You don't win it in free agency, though. There's games to be played. But right now, Howie's doing a great job.
Yeah, and maybe at first blush, you look at that Landon Dickerson deal and you go, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. And then you see Robert Hunt get $100 million and you go, okay, well, that works out for the Eagles in a lot of ways. Let me flip this on you, though, Gino, because let's say Hassan Reddick gets traded. Bryce Huff, undersized edge player. Nolan Smith going to take in a larger role. Undersized edge player. Linebacker play has been a bugaboo for them for years. So what do you think about this approach up front in a Vic Fangio defense where, yes, you have to be able to penetrate, but you're also going to have to be able to stop the run with light boxes, something Philadelphia is not necessarily well-versed in doing lately?
I think you're starting to see, in terms of personnel, the shift towards truly what Vic Fangio is going to bring to this defense. And I think the one move that we haven't mentioned, and might be the most underrated one, was them going out and signing Zach Bond. He's a jack edge rusher. He's a stand-up type of guy who at the same time, he will pop into coverage. That's what they're going to have to get out of their guys now. It's not going to be 4 down, 2 guys hand in their dirt. It's going to be a lot of different looks, and you have to be able to do a lot of different things. And they haven't solved the linebacker equation yet. Nicholas Morrow, he goes out there and gets a deal from Buffalo. I don't know how they put him and prioritized him at the top of their list, but that's another story. You haven't signed Zach Cunningham back into the building yet. The Shaq Leonard experiment was anything but successful. You only have Nakobe Dean in the building. Ben Van Sumeren, who was primarily a special teamer for you last year. You just signed Zach Bond, who's more of a stand-up type of linebacker / edge rusher. They still have to solidify the middle of the defense. It is a problem.
Stay up to date all year on the Philadelphia Eagles by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Eagles on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the Suns aren't going to figure this out because of one big problem. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Some of the odds on next year's Super Bowl champion have moved. 49ers are the favorites 5-1. Chiefs plus 650. The Ravens 9-1, the only other team with better than 10-1 odds. The Bills 12-1. The Cowboys and Lions 13-1, and the Bengals at 15-1. Where are the Packers? Come on. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Phoenix has KD, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. They're going to catch fire, right? They're going to contend for the West, right? Wrong. For one reason, says Matt Moore and David Ramil on Locked On NBA.
Yeah, I don't think that's likely. I think you can kind of, if you're looking for their identity, it's the big three, and that's basically all it is. Like I keep thinking about, these super teams and their formation and everything else like that. And I know that era is a lot of people kind of point to it and say that it's kind of dead, right? But you have these incredible 3 all-stars there. And I think back to, say the Miami Heat big three and what separated them, if those shots weren't falling, and they're completely different styles of play, obviously, but they had the incredible defense. They had that tenacity. They could turn it on and flip that switch. I don't know that Phoenix can do it, but they can outscore anybody. And yes, maybe that's over reliant on their offense when their defense is not as great. And I mean, it's going to be porous, but I think that's still a path to winning is, we can still outscore teams. I'm not sure if that's going to guarantee, it can't guarantee them a title. I don't think they're the favorites, but I still like their chances in the playoffs. It just can depend on them catching fire at the right moment and then all of a sudden being able to beat a team 4 out of 7 times. That's not great. And I don't know that you can look at them and say they're a shoo-in as a contender.
Here's the thing. The Suns right now are in that 6th spot. They would get the Timberwolves if the playoffs started today, and the Timberwolves don't have Karl Anthony Towns. Now, some people have suggested that maybe the Wolves are better off without Karl Anthony Towns, but in the postseason, I find that pretty hard to believe. And then there's a chance you're going to have to play the Nuggets in round 2. If there is a team out west that can just outscore the Nuggets, we just saw them do it, and we saw in the postseason last year, the Suns give the Nuggets just Devin Booker buckets, Kevin Durant buckets. Can those two guys, because they are preternatural scorers, can Booker just be the best player on the floor for 2 games? Can KD just be the best player on the floor for 2 games? I understand the defense is a problem. But when you have scoring like they do, guys who are playoff battle tested like they do, I don't know that we can rule them out. Those guys are just too good. The talent is too much. It would be scary for me if any team, especially if they're healthy, having to go against Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. That is a whole lot of scoring that I have to contend with. I have to execute perfectly every game. That's asking a lot. And finally, Aaron Rodgers is a top choice for Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s running mate as vice president. Yes, Aaron Rodgers for vice president. Can't you just see it? Campaign on Tuesday, then game prep on Wednesday. I wonder if his presidential campaign will last longer than his season with the Jets. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today, here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, Conference Championship Week brings plenty of drama, but which bubble team is set for the biggest jump? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.